Right, lads, the Premier League's back, and while all the oddballs are spending hours on fantasy football, the cool kids are getting AI to do it and then going back to bed to spend time asking Google Gemini for 3 obscure facts about the opening weekend's opponent. Did you know they are the only team in the top 4 divisions you can't colour in? Much like a gift parcel from an illiterate, Hull City has no enclosed letters in it. It was also news to me that Hull were forced away from their ground by World War II bombs for a bit, just like Manchester United. And the third fact we will come to later, because it's time to talk cans and plans with Ant from the fanzine or the podcast to Hull and Back, and the man with the poshest name in the United away end. It's John T. John T, you'll insist on calling it Kingston upon Hull. How are you getting there? Is it the train or is it a bottle of vintage port? And have you got your own driver?
We're going down on the monkey bus as always. We're leaving for Manchester at about 9 o'clock, making our way up to Hull.
Tell us about the monkey bus for people who don't know. How big are we talking, and is it still picking up in Old Trafford and in town, and then you're sort of at it from early doors?
Yeah, so it's me and Blackie that run it together. We'll be leaving from Old Trafford about 9 o'clock, and then Regent Road, Salford, and then into town, and then head up from there. Probably be drinking from minute one. Yeah.
I am praying that your audio is going to get fixed by the time this goes out, and nobody's turned it off already. And is it a cause for celebration to have Manchester United back in town, or is that deeply patronising as a question?
I think for any Hull-based Man United fans, it would be, but for us, it's just it's any team we're going to be facing in the Premier League again. We welcome it because it's been 10 years since we were here last time.
Really,
we've never been in
Coventry and Ipswich.
Yeah, well, them two. That's the worst part about being promoted with two other teams. You got to play them two again. It's no, new teams that are coming up to the Prem kind of thing. We have to play those two, but with them two, yeah, they're probably in a better position than us slightly because they had a better squad last season due to our limitations. But we're going to give it a good crack this season, I think.
So, how well do you think you can do? Are you kind of all praying for 17th, or?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, look, we're realistic, we're optimistic, but we're also realistic in the same. We probably got promoted a bit too soon. Last season we had a fee restriction, so we weren't allowed to spend any money whatsoever. So the team was literally pieced together with frees and loans. The manager did a fantastic job. XG has us like 23rd in the table or something like that, but we got promoted in 6th. So he worked wonders. He's a very adaptable manager. He's not wedded to one way of playing, which is a bit of a wild card, I think, for the Prem, is that he's happy to change and obsessed with playing one specific way. But no, I think we will probably struggle to stay in the division. Like we say, we've just got too much to do in terms of recruitment for the squad. Not a lot of time to do that. But we'll definitely give it a good go, and it won't be this embarrassing beat Derby's points total that a lot of people are making out and easily 20th and relegated by February or whatever.
We might end up clipping that up, for the return leg. But has all that stuff you mentioned gone under the radar from like national media perspective? Because you had to like a last minute fire sale in June. I think you sold 2 players for 8.5 mil to avoid a 6-point penalty, and then spent 78 million on 11 new players, I think.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it, how the rules work. But yeah, we had to raise 6 million by the end of that month, or else we'd have suffered a points deduction this season, which obviously we wanted to avoid because a points deduction in the Prem is pretty much right. That's it, you're gone already. But then, like you say, obviously after that calendar period's gone, we can now spend all the Prem money that we've got, which is what we're doing, and we're probably bringing another 6 or 7 players. I would imagine we've still got all the loan spots to fill as well. But yeah, we'll struggle. But like I say, the manager's our biggest asset, and he gets these players working hard. And our style of play probably suits the Premier League because we like to be the team that doesn't have the ball. We want you to come at us. Then we'll absorb the pressure and hit teams in transition. We were really good, probably the best in the league in transition last season. So it's a bit of our race really because we're used to that style already, whereas Ipswich and Cov have got to adapt and change to that kind of style because they're not going to have the ball majority of the time this season. So I'm quietly optimistic that we'll give it a good go. It'd be a miracle if we stay up, but if anyone can do it, our manager can.
So you've broken the club record, paying 20 million for Nobel Mendy from Rayo Vallecano, right? And apparently even beating Barcelona to Lucas Harrington, who was the Australian lad in the World Cup, who's only 18. So now, with respect, they feel like players who are using Hull as a stepping stone, but also Jack Butland, who could have come in and become a hero towards the end of his career, and he'd broken his arm already.
Well, Butland was always going to come in as our number 2 anyway, because we'd always planned on getting another keeper in. I think we went for Hornacek, who's gone to Newcastle, I believe. And then obviously we've gone and got Salakis, who's a Greek international. He's fantastic, and from what we've seen in pre-season, he's a bloody good keeper. But Butland was always going to come in and be number 2. So yeah, it's a bit of a pain that he's got injured, because it means that we're going to have to dip in probably and grab another backup keeper just until January. Which would be a bit of a waste of a loan spot. But yeah, that's been unfortunate. But yeah, the signings of we've been bringing in young players that have got, really high potential, massive ceilings, but more importantly, big resale value. So I think it's obviously, in terms of, if we're being realistic in where we are as a football club and the likelihood of us going back down, if we did get relegated, we've got players there that are worth a pretty penny to sell. And I think our owner's pretty happy for us to be a stepping stone club for some of these big players that are come in and learn the trade and then move on to someone better. Because you look at the likes of Brighton and clubs like that have that model where you bring players in for cheap and then you sell them for a lot of money. That's probably the way you want to do it.
Imagine, John T, 11 new players. Imagine the E-Reds reaction to United getting 11 new players. That'd be like their treble, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think half of them probably be getting slagged off before they kick a ball, though.
I hope you didn't pay money for them earbuds.
They're not working at all.
No, it's hanging. I don't know.
Is it better if I take them out?
Yeah, I think go for it now. Take them out. I think that's worth the gamble. You've also, haven't you got loads of injuries as well, Anne?
Yeah, so obviously a couple of the players that we brought in were carrying little niggles. Like, we brought Joe Gellart back on a permanent. He's not going to probably be ready until the Carabao Cup game, I think. Obviously Marita as well, who we brought in from Porto. He's from Sporting. Sorry, he's carrying a bit of a knock as well, so he probably won't feature against Man United. But we've been a club cursed with injuries for the last 2 or 3 years. It's been absolutely. I mean, last season was the worst I've ever had as a football fan following a team in terms of injuries. It was ridiculous. But hopefully this season would be the break of the curse. But from the way this summer's gone already, it's not looking likely. But hopefully we'll be somewhere near full complement by the time the window closes. We've got the rest of these players in that we want, and these players back from injury.
Hopefully not this weekend, though. And that, John T, coupled with the fact that Hull City, as Ant mentioned, have got a player called Hornacek, which guarantees you can't be taken seriously, full stop.
We don't have him. He's at Newcastle. We've got Salakis.
Oh, right. That's good then. Sorry, I misunderstood that. You can tell
you got turned down by someone with that name. Is that the
you
case? Does that mean they got turned down by someone with that name?
That's even worse. It's a very good point. I'm glad we're on the details here. This is why we have this is why we need paid researchers. And if you want to sponsor us, get in touch. Well, the chat then, John T, on the way up, and I hesitate to ask this question just to get the way the answer might come out like Darth Vader. But will the chat on the way up be of a routine win, or do you think with us United fans the fear of previous bosses still lurk? Like, we're just waiting for it to go tits up any minute, even when you've had some positivity.
I do think now that's probably settled well in with the United fans, is that they're probably not getting ahead of themselves as quickly as they might have done 3, 4, 5 years ago. Even though the signings look good, and obviously last year we ended the season well with Carrick, but I don't think anyone will be getting too ahead of themselves with where we're going to finish this year. But I do think more than likely people will expect to win on Saturday.
Pete Molyneux of this very parish is looking for a ticket for the game at what this weekend, at least, is called the MKM Stadium. So if anyone can help get hold of him, or if you know him, or just email us, creamofmanchester1878@gmail.com. You will find us on all the socials, and we would very much like you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and keep telling your mates. One day we might even cover our costs. What else? Yeah, you've had a few names for that new ground. Are you old enough to remember and miss Boothbury Park?
Yeah, my first ever season pass was at Boothbury Park as a kid. I remember switching over in 2002 and thinking how amazing this stadium looked in comparison. But yeah, it's had obviously it's owned by the council, so it gets a company to buy the naming rights for it, and then that's why the name changes. Obviously, it started off as the KC Stadium, then it went to KCOM because they had like a company rebrand, same company, just different name. And then obviously MKM have taken it over now, so it's currently the MKM. But it would be known as the Circle. It's on the old site of the very first ground that we had. So if you're walking over the bridge from the train station direction, you can actually see a little remnant of what was the very first ground that we had on the left hand side. I feel like the club should do a bit more to tidy it up and sort of preserve it, but you can see it on the way in. So yeah, it's a bit of heritage as well where that's what the stadium is.
What do you call it then? You call it a circle, you lot?
We just call it the MKM. It's one of them where because it's never actually been known as its proper name, it's always had a naming right thing. It's just you just kind of adopt whatever company's taking it over really.
Yes, we might have that to come, John T. I tell you what though, what we want to really know is, will there be grown men dressed as tigers?
I would be disappointed if there wasn't. I think the big tiger claw things need to come out as well to give them to the kids to wind up the away fans and give them a bit of that as well. So I'm looking forward to
Is
that.
it
But
a
there is
wind
one
up
thing.
or is it pity people are feeling?
I do have to admit, it was funny when they were doing it to Millwall.
The chant itself as well is perfect terrace banter, because if you're that bad to the point where you are getting more by the Tigers chanted at you, they will do it back in a mocky way, and it will look even worse from your perspectives.
What was that you were saying, John T, about, would you say Millwall?
I said, yeah, I think there's some funny videos online from them winding the Millwall fans up at the back end of last season.
Yeah. What was that? What
Was it
were
the
they just getting
playoffs?
wound up for no reason or something?
No, yeah, I know which video you're on about. They actually didn't react to that chant. It was, I don't know why that video put that. That's from the 2008 Cup game. First ever time we got promoted to the Prem, we got Millwall in the Cup. And it was just, I think they just decided that they were going to come down to that game and just have a scrap. They didn't want to watch football whatsoever. That was before kickoff. They just decided to rip chairs up and throw them into the home end, and so it just, as you do in a third round FA Cup game or whatever it was.
Got to feed them. They will get hungry. Have you seen that kit, John T? Because it's less tigerish, isn't it? What do you make of it? Have you seen it with the sort of 70s style kit that Hull have got?
I've not seen it, unfortunately, no.
Great. Strong line of questioning. This is why we do our prep. You'll have seen it though. I saw people getting a bit frosty about it, and I thought, actually, I think it's one of the better kits, and especially this. You're a club who, when I was a kid, had something that resembled a Chewits wrapper for a kit.
Yeah. We've had some terrible kits. I remember the Tiger print of '93. That's still an infamous one. That if you can find online, a genuine one from then is about £400, I think. So it's a bit of a collector's item at the minute. But yeah, I like
because all the others were burned.
Yeah. But I think, this season's kit, I really liked it. I didn't understand the negative reaction it got from the start. It was based on a kit, and it's almost like for like if you look at the kit that it's based on from the mid-70s. I think they've done a real good job of it. I think a lot of people had issue with the fact that it's not the current badge on the kit, even though it's the badge of the era that it's based upon. So I didn't quite understand that criticism, but it's sold club record amount of numbers, so it can't be that as bad as people were making out, because they keep having to restock because people keep buying it. So
with them colours, you can't polish a turd, can you?
Do you know what? We're quite unique in how we do our kits as well, because we obviously a lot of clubs will have just plain shirts, or will just have stripes all the time, or hoops. We're quite unique in the sense that we vary it from season upon season. So like, you guys know full well that a Man United top is going to be red. It's not going to change much. It's going to be red. It'll probably have the white Adidas lines on the shoulder. That's about it. Whereas we could have stripes, we could have some weird design, we could have a tire track sash, we could have a plain shirt. It changes year upon year. So we get a little bit of entertainment in that. But yeah, I think the colour scheme, there's not many black and orange / amber clubs in England. I think Blackpool, the Tangerine, are the Exeter. No, Exeter, Barnet, sorry. They're orange.
It's reasonably close to Bradford City, I'd say, but that's about it.
Yeah, they're amber and maroon, aren't they, I think?
God bless you taking that level of manipulation as a positive, though, on the colours. What reaction will Harry Maguire get?
A positive, yeah. He was great for us. I think underutilised when we first had him as well. I think it only took Marco Silva's appointment as manager for him to realise how good of a ball carrying centre back Harry Maguire was. I don't know if he still does that nowadays, but he was really good bringing the ball out from a back three and almost playing it like a midfielder. And he was always dominant in the air. We loved Harry, and for the money that we got for him at the time, obviously he went for I think 18 million to Leicester with a sell on. Obviously, so then when you guys spent 80 million on him, we got another 8 million from from that deal, because we had a 10% sell on, so we benefited again. But yeah, he wanted that long to make a legendary cult status kind of thing, but he was here long enough to make a good enough impact.
Hey, Chauncey, I was at this game. I remember it felt like it was just before Christmas. I want to say in about, I don't know, 2014 or 15. I remember sitting up in K and watching Maguire. Basically, Hull managed to just stifle United completely, and United did quite a good job of doing it themselves under Mourinho. But I think it was like a 0-0. It was a terrible game of football and it was freezing at Old
It was at the
Trafford just
first leg of
before.
the League Cup semi-final.
No, I think it was a league game. Well, I might be wrong, but I remember thinking Maguire was a real player then, and they should have taken him. And I later found out Moyes tried to,
Right.
or at least suggested it, and probably dithered, and they ended up then denying it Mourinho, the centre back, for about 50 million, and then they paid or whatever they paid for. They paid loads for him. What did you say? 80 million? Was it that much?
80 million,
80,
it
yeah.
was.
Wow. Yeah. So they paid. I remember they paid a lot more than he would have cost the year before and all that.
Yeah, I think it was 50 million they could have got him the year before. I think they were a bit stuck between him and Alderweireld, weren't they, at the time, for like 25 million, and then ended up buying neither of them. And then Mourinho played Herrera at centre back to prove a point, and we got beat 3-0.
That's right, yeah. He was against Tottenham. Yeah. Oh, great days. Paddy McNair's still there, isn't he, Ant?
He is, yeah. We signed him in January on a free.
Is he all right? Is he popular? How's he doing?
He's not really played that much to make a lasting impact, to be fair. He was brought in more of a backup option at the centre back or midfield or right back, wherever we've had to play him. He's done well whenever he's been called upon, but he's not really a starter, so he's not one of those that's going to get rave reviews, but he's just a steady Eddie pair of, he's a safe pair of hands to call upon if we need him. I don't think he'll feature much this season. I think if we bring in another defender, I think he probably might even leave. So I don't think he'll get much game time this year.
There's a few of United's gone that way. So Brandon Williams, Will Keane, Josh King, I think, but Fraser Campbell, surely out of the players, would be the popular one, right?
Yeah, we had a period, because obviously we've got a connection with Warren Joyce. Obviously, he's Man U, isn't he? And he was part of the Great Escape that we had, where we almost got relegated into the non-league, and Warren Joyce became player manager and saved us. And since he's been at Man U, especially when we hired Nigel Pearson, he kind of utilised that relationship a lot. We brought in a lot of Man U youngsters like Robbie Brady, Corey Evans, James Chester, Joe Dudgeon, players like that back then. So we did utilise the Man U Youth Academy quite a bit at the start, but less so in recent years. But yeah, Fraser Campbell that season, when we brought him in, and I think he scored 15 from January to the end of the season and set up obviously Windas's goal at Wembley. Yeah, he was, and then came back for a second stint a few years later as well. So yeah, he's a bit of a cult hero, but we haven't had too much success from Man U play. James Chester was a solid, and Corey Evans were good servants, but the rest of them, Brandon Williams was a bit, we kind of hoped that he could sort of re-engage his career here, and it never really happened. He never got really fit enough, and we had to let him go. But hopefully he gets his career back on track. But he could have been a really good player.
Yeah,
he was the one we were kind of banking on.
Yeah, same. But you are also one of the 92 clubs to have been managed by Steve Bruce. So is he still popular up there?
Yeah, I think he's probably still to this day our most successful manager. We got promoted to the Premier League twice under Brucey. He got us into Europe, an FA Cup final, which we 2-0 up in. Probably should have gone on to win. But yeah, no, we had some really, really good days under Brucey. He's always well thought of here. I think a lot of fans were panning for him to come back a couple of years ago. I think football's moved on a bit from Brucey. I think his management started a little bit outdated, and what he struggled towards the end. I think Blackpool was his last one. But yeah, no, we love Brucey up here, and we actually had Alex Bruce here at the same time as well. He brought him through. So that was an interesting little sort of nepo baby moment.
He's a good lad. Johnsy, let's risk one final answer. It's not even started this season, but a loss would feel disastrous. I think. Like they've just got this thing. Now this sounds like whinging for teams who actually do struggle and get relegated and stuff. But like a bad early season game now just feels like it's going to be a long 9 months, right? But at least it's not as far to come back as like Ipswich.
Yeah, I think we've had games the last few years where we've started off at home, and we've always kind of got off to a half-decent start rather than that kind of Brighton at home game when we lost. But you feel like if we started this off badly, it's just set such a bad tone for the season, especially when you've got what on paper should be quite a good start with Hull, Ipswich and Everton as the first 3 games. You'd like to come out with 9 points there.
Go on. Predict it for us, Ant. What's going to happen in this game?
I feel like we're too underprepared for this game. I think it's coming too soon. I wanted to hang on to a quietly optimistic, absolutely under the cosh 1-0 proper shithouse win. But I think I'm going to logically go against it. I think we can. Do you know what? No, I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I'm not gonna predict a loss. I don't think we've actually ever lost an opening Premier League home game. I think I'll have to double check that. So that'll be an interesting one. But I'll take a draw.
How many have you had? 5?
I don't think it's that many. I think it's about 2.
John says you want to do a prediction?
Yeah, I'll go 2-0 United.
So I'll be swerving match today otherwise. Right, thank you very much to John C. joining us on this occasion from the Planet Mustafa and our guest Ants from the To Hull and Back podcast. Mind your data. Manchester United have genuinely no idea what they're doing with it.